welcome to the world's greatest Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. I'm your co-host, Mike L., and as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today we're going to be continuing our Spider-Man cartoon from 1994, like recap episode, like playthrough.
That's right.
Talk through,
playthrough, talk through. We're going to be doing... Now, just for the record, we have been skipping episodes here and there, but going forward, we're going to pretty much do every episode for the remainder of the series.
Ooh,
and
exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And to help us out this week, once again, G.I. Jolie.
Hi.
What's up?
I'm doing none of the heavy lifting, so...
Unfortunately, Bex Luthor could not be with us this week, but we're going to make up for it by being extra sassy and extra sarcastic this week, okay? So,
Perfect.
we are reviewing 3 episodes of the show. What was the name? Oh, yeah, I forgot. This episode features our very, very favorite Spider-Man supervillain introduced in Spectacular Spider-Man, and his name is The Spot, and we have been waiting for him to get his due, and he finally did in this episode. He's finally introduced to the cartoon, and G.I. Jolie, if you can just tell us quickly what happens in this episode.
Yeah. So The Spot is recruited after him and another scientist in the lab kind of develop the Spot technology, right? To travel into interdimensions. They decide that they're going to rob banks and do all kinds of crime with all of these new spots. Because the spots open up portals, and then they find out that Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, is like, I want you to develop the Spot technology to get rid of Spider-Man. So that's kind of part of it too.
He ends up having this interdimensional spot black hole technology kind of like go onto his body, and he's able to take these spots, throw them in the air, put his hand through them, walk into them, pass through them, come out in other places on Earth, and then he ends up using them to like rob a bank, and Spider-Man ends up fighting him, and that's pretty much the episode. Overall, I thought it was an excellent adaptation of our favorite villain from the Spectacular Spider-Man, Al Milgrom days, the late 90s Spectacular Spider-Man. This is one of the better episodes as far as writing and as far as animation. I know we talked about how the animation was, we felt like it was better in the first season, but I think it's bounced back.
Yeah,
so I really like this one.
All 3 episodes I found that we're going to be talking about today, the animation is like spectacular. Yeah. It could be that like it's the end of the season. They want to like finish things off like on a strong note. And yeah, you can tell that the budget went into these few episodes, even compared to like the episodes before this were like the Venom and Carnage ones, which I thought were pretty okay from what I'm remembering. Right. These ones felt much better. I found. There's some really great stuff in this. I love Dr. Owens. I love his like relationship with the scientist. I can't remember her name. Their relationship is fantastic. Kind of like I had briefly talked about before on our like little bonus episode. I really like that the two of them kind of team up, and we can kind of see their relationship grow from when they both join the Kingpin's crew. I also think it's way more straightforward in this than the comics origin of like how he gets his powers and what he's doing to even like what he's even doing with this experiment. Like it's very clear that Kingpin wants to make a machine to open up portals so he can spy on his enemies, so he can figure out who Spider-Man is and capture him and defeat him right away. Like it'll finally give him the upper hand. There's even like, there's a lot of great things with Kingpin in this episode too. I love when he is fighting Spider-Man. I'm pretty sure that's this episode. Even he is like fighting Spider-Man at one point, and he's like, I'm 350 pounds, but my body fat percentage is only 2%, which means I am all muscle. It's like, wow, it's so good. It's great to see Spider-Man struggle against him. Yeah, some great stuff. The fact that Kingpin has to turn and be like a good guy at the end, or else he's going to lose as well. He has like a great line of something like, if the entire world dies, it won't be good for business. It's just so great that he like his whole life is being the kingpin and like making sure that his empire is thriving. So he even thinks about his own life as a business. It's fantastic. It's great.
Right. G.I. Jolie, were you a fan of this episode?
Oh my God. The one part where her name is Sylvia Lopez, which
Thank you.
Okay.
I had to look that up really quick, but Kingpin like uses her pretty looks to lure the good doctor into working with them in the lab, which is hilarious. I love it. He was like, he was working for Tony Stark. Was he working for Tony Stark before? He was
Stark. Actually. Yeah, he was working for Tony, and then Tony was like, dimension hopping is way too dangerous. We're going to stop that. So unfortunately, we're cutting all the funding to your experiment, but we'll find something else for you to do at Stark Industries. And Dr. Owens is like, I'm out of here. Fuck you. I want to keep doing this interdimensional experiment. So
yeah, like I loved everything about this. This is the first time I didn't feel confused, and the comedy was hilarious. All of the spot puns were like spot on.
Yeah.
And
do you remember any of them?
Yeah. Well, Spider-Man was like, when Spider-Man's fighting the spot, he's like, "Oh, looks like that hit the spot." So
right.
And then there was one where there were just like visual gags, which were really funny, and Kingpin is envisioning the ways he would use the dilator to like best Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's just stuck to the side of a wall, and then a portal opens above him and half of the Kingpin comes out of it and grabs him. Like,
so great.
That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's 100% Wilson Fisk. Like, what else is really good? Oh, even like the side drama or the B plot with like Felicia and Jason McIndale didn't feel shoehorned in. It flowed really well. This is the first time I felt like I was watching like a well-written drama.
Especially like paired with the next episode.
Yes. Yeah.
It flows like right into what's going to be happening next in next week's episode. Even like the Spot's origin and what he's been doing flows into the rest of the season. It's they really know what they're doing in this show, and they're able to like write it and have that through line, even though they are episodic episodes, right? So and
like the spot himself is like, he's just such a confident, once he gets all the spots onto his body, he just becomes this really confident character, and the way the voice actor is perfect. The through line for his character's direction is kind of perfect, and there's just something so charismatic about this Spot character that I really, really like.
Right.
And even in the end when they're working together, it was like, okay, well, I guess I'm working with Spider-Man now. And like, he's like, well, I know where there's a bunch of power that will power the dilator to power the spots on you. And they end up sucking it out of the very plane that they're standing on, which like kind of seemed like it might be a problem in a second. But yeah, everything was like believable. The pseudoscience was believable, and it wasn't like too outlandish, and there were like a crazy amount of jokes. Like I found myself chuckling stupidly at some of them, and then the sort of resolution where Spider-Man figures out how to kind of get the better of the Spot, because it looks like he's unbeatable at this point. Up until a point, I should say, it seemed like the Spot was like unbeatable. Like Spider-Man wasn't able to get his hands on him at all until he figured out the way he did it with Doctor Strange in No Way Home, that it was all math. Once he figured out really quickly that this portal opens up into another portal, he started to figure out very fast that I think that's when the joke comes in where he's like, well, that looks like that hit the spot.
Yeah, they also did like a I say it like they referenced Far From Home, but it's almost like the opposite.
Yeah.
But it reminded me of the ending of Far From Home with Mysterio and him having to completely rely on his spider senses because he didn't know what was real or not with Mysterio's like holograms. So he had to just kind of like close his eyes and feel with the spider sense where the danger was and punch in that direction, which he was able to like punch through a dimension, and it came through the one that he knew.
That was great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. I also really love the stuff with MJ.
Yeah.
Like even that is really well written. They're really setting up for later what's going to happen in the third episode we're going to talk about. But through all of these episodes, they're really kind of showing Peter and MJ's relationship and the fact that Peter has always struggled with his love life and not being able to like balance it really well, and his fear of like putting his loved ones in danger, and he's kind of like come to terms with it, and he's staying with MJ, and he's like really working on that like superhero real life balance. And we see that in this one right at the start with like the carnival, and he's got to kind of rush away, and then we'll see it again in the next episode, and it all kind of like comes to a head in the third final episode, and when like his superhero and his alter ego really clash and become one, and it's just a really great arc watching these three at the same time.
Right. Now, I want to point out, we've been talking a lot about the writing in this episode and how much it's standing out. Well, first of all, it was actually written by a guy named James Krieg, who only wrote a handful of episodes. Only one episode before this, the Hydro Man episode. He wrote this episode, then he goes on to write Carnage, Turning Point, The Return of Hydro Man Part 1, and really, I really hate clones.
Which is like the finale.
Okay. Yeah. So there you go. Apparently he got noticed because he did a fan film called Viva Spider-Man. And that kind of got him noticed. Stan Lee read one of his scripts and said, Jim Krieg writes well, but he doesn't get Spidey. So maybe he did like a second draft for this one. But anyway, I thought the writing was definitely standout in this one. And, the regular writer, which is John Semper Jr., he's definitely a good writer. But the fact that we all noticed how much sharper this one was, I kind of we can give credit to James Krieg for that. So...
yeah, maybe it was him there with the assist or not. I don't know.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, we've all... the thing is the Spot is so clearly a good character. And I was actually thinking, why is it that he's not taken seriously? Why did he disappear from the comics for, like, 25 years? And I was thinking maybe it's because of his name, the Spot, right? Like, it sounds like something you don't want to have on your pants somewhere. Maybe if he had a different name, like, I don't know what, like Polka Dot or...
I mean, even if he just didn't have an alter ego and they just called him Dr. Owens, that's great.
Well, but is that a pun, though, his name? Like, how do you spell his last name?
O-H-N.
Oh, but I think,
but
that wouldn't catch on. That's not a cool supervillain name,
Because the Spot is so much cooler.
Well, the Spot at least reflects what he is. Like again, hey, if you guys got something better than Polka Dot, feel free to share. Because that's all I can come up with.
Yeah.
He made a joke about him looking like he should be at a firehouse. So, like, Dalmatian.
Oh, yeah. There you go. The Dalmatian. Yeah. Not a bad idea. Anyway, so let's think about
Dr.
that.
Dimension.
Dr. Dimension. Okay, yeah. There you go. So there you go, listeners. Feel free to write in and suggest new names for the Spot to make him more respectable, and then maybe he can be in the next Spider-Man movie, right?
Well...
oh, wait a minute. He is going to be in the next Spider-Man movie. Holy moly. It worked, guys. 140 episodes, and we got our wish.
Yeah, I'm going to attribute that to us, honestly.
I think you're right.
Yeah, somebody at Sony Animation is listening to this podcast right
100%.
Josh is furiously sending it to everybody.
Yeah, it's really just me, like, constantly emailing them, like, okay, fine, we'll do it.
So I think it's safe to say we all recommend this episode. It's one of the better ones we've seen, right?
For sure, yeah.
All right. Now we're going to jump to the next episode, which we call Goblin War. And coincidentally, for those who are regular listeners, be sure to tune in next week because we're going to be covering a different Goblin War in the comics, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So in this episode, now, for those that don't know, the cartoon follows a different chronology than the comics. In the cartoon, the Hobgoblin is introduced first, then the Green Goblin. So for old-timers like me, it gets a little bit confusing. But in this episode, they finally end up confronting each other. But we get a really cool scene of, like, Peter Parker going to this party and, you know, running into Harry Osborn, who used to date Mary Jane, but now Peter's dating Mary Jane. So there's that classic Peter Parker, you know, soap opera melodrama, right? And then the main event of this episode is that Green Goblin and Hobgoblin finally get to face each other on their goblin gliders. It's fingers blasting everywhere, right? It's people flying everywhere, and they actually I completely forgot about this, but they actually the little doohickey device. It looks like an old Polaroid camera, but that's the thing that
that's the dilator.
Yes. They end up stealing, like fighting. It's like the MacGuffin of this episode. They end up fighting over the dilator. Also, Hobgoblin ends up revealing his identity to his fiance, which is Felicia Hardy. And I kind of didn't realize this as we were going along, but Hobgoblin in this TV show, his secret identity, I mean, and old-time cartoon fans will, you know, dismiss me for not knowing this already, but he has a different secret identity than the one in the comics. Did you guys realize this?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know. I just didn't even notice. But it's what is it? Philip.
I'm looking. Is it Mackendale? Jason Philip
Yeah.
Mackendale.
Wait a minute. Is that right?
It's Mackendale.
No, but it's like is it Philip Mackendale?
Jason.
Hold on.
I think they call him. Yeah, he has like two first names.
Okay. So he's kind of like a combination of Jason Mackendale and
I think
Jason
it was
Mackendale.
yeah, I think it was to kind of hide a little bit who he was, right? Because at this point in the comics, like in the 90s, it is Jason Mackendale that is Hobgoblin. So it would make sense that they would introduce Mackendale as the Hobgoblin in the show, and especially with the mess of the introduction of the first Hobgoblin.
Yes.
And I think to kind of hide it a little bit, they changed his name to Philip, Philip Jason Mackendale, so that way they could just call him Philip throughout the show, and then the reveal is this is Philip Jason Mackendale, and everybody's
right.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, this episode, again, they're on a streak here. This was another good episode. I enjoyed every minute of it. I love the Green Goblin. I love the Hobgoblin. I love seeing them fight. I think they've kind of bounced back a little bit, and I thought this one was really good. What did you guys think?
Yeah, it's great. Mark Hamill is the king of superhero supervillains. Honestly, I think he's perfect for the Hobgoblin.
There's a point where there was just cackling happening, and I was like, he could just cackle for the whole episode.
Yeah,
I would enjoy
it. He just communicates and cackles. I think like Mackendale especially is more like loose. He has a few more screws loose than even Norman. Norman, it feels like there's kind of like a balance between Norman and the Goblin, and there's like that struggle. Where Hobgoblin, when Jason puts on the mask, it's like there is no Mackendale. He's just turned into this like wild, like loony villain. Right. And Hamill, I think, really lent like his voice is perfect for this role and how it's portrayed in the show. I surprisingly like all the stuff with Felicia Hardy too. Like I was worried that I wasn't gonna like that, but it's interesting to see like an actual struggle with like a love triangle where it's like Peter is in love with MJ and Spider-Man is in love with Felicia, right? So they kind of have this like weird dynamic going on between the three of them. Like Peter is struggling because he's kind of like stuck. He loves MJ, but for some reason he's like still attracted to Felicia when he's in the costume, and trying to kind of like push her away, and like knowing that he wants to be with MJ. And then she's kind of like reluctantly marrying Jason McIndale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
G.I. Jolie, what do you think?
Yeah, just to kind of float off of what Josh was saying about the tertiary characters in the episode, there's just something that I really like about the way that they're written in these few episodes. Like the Felicia that we get in this show is not the Felicia that I've been reading about in these books. They are destroying that character, and that there's one dimension, or there's like 3 dimensions, or whatever, how many dimensions there are to like a normal person. 3?
I guess 3.
I guess 3.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is there's one solid character in the show, and it's consistent.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like there was the Felicia in the comics, but it was I was reading 3 different Felicias. And I feel like I don't know who the character is based on the comics. I know that there's several different personalities that Black Cat takes on. I don't know which one is the right Black Cat.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It's very inconsistent the way that she's written in the comics, and we don't really know which one we're getting when we sit down. Like, sometimes sit down to read. Sometimes she's a good guy. Sometimes she's bad. Sometimes she's in love with Peter. Sometimes she hates him. Like, she's so inconsistently written. Even her like powers are inconsistent. Like, does she still have them? Does she not have them? Is she obsessed with Peter? Does she want to be with Peter, or does she only want to be with, like, it's never clear. In this, we definitely have a more clear character with her. Same with Deb in the show, like Justice for Deb. We they're able to kind of like flesh out these tertiary characters and really give them a reason to be in the show, and like an actual story point. Yeah,
and it's like someone is actually paying attention. They're like, oh, okay, well, you can't write Deb this way because she's already been written a certain way. And that would be very confusing. And you would think that level of editing would go into a comic book that's released monthly. But apparently it's not. So...
Right.
There's just something about the characters in the show that is just like, it's really stellar. I didn't really enjoy like the last few episodes that we had watched, but these 3
those Venom Carnage ones were messy for sure. But they continue this Felicia story as well. Like in like the next few episodes, we kind of see how she evolves from like being in love with Spider-Man and also kind of torn between Spidey and Jason, and then what happens in the aftermath when she learns that this person that she was in love with is a supervillain, and then the other person is kind of like pushing her away because, you know, she doesn't really know why, but you kind of see that evolve in the coming episodes too with her character. And I love her character a lot more in this than in the comic so far. I don't think I've read a comic with her that is as good as how she is in the show. Like
even just one final thought about the whole thing, the consistency and whatever, is like that even Mary Jane is consistent. Like a Mary Jane who got ditched in the last episode and was like mad about it. In this episode, it continues. The through line of her pissed offness continues, where Peter's tracked her down into the park and she's walking around with Liz Allen. And she's like, Liz, can you tell Peter to GTFO? I hate him right now. And it makes sense. And then later on, when she's like, you know what? She does things as a character that we all wished that the Mary Jane comic character did a few times, which was, you know what? I know that you're Spider-Man, and I know that you kind of have like live in this dual world. It's your job. I should really, I shouldn't be this mad about what happened.
Right. And I think the good thing too is like she still doesn't know that he's Spider-Man in the show. But she knows that when he runs off, it's to take pictures for his job, right? So like she still is like, I know you have to do this because it's your job and you have to go take pictures and follow the danger. I just feel like I'm constantly being ditched because you're always leaving to do work stuff.
Yeah,
so
okay.
it feels like even more justified almost that she's angry because she's like, you're gonna fucking go take pictures, that's why you're leaving our date.
Yeah,
where
right.
if it was like her going and being leaving just to be Spider-Man to save people, I feel like you can make an argument how it's like, you know, I have a responsibility to do this, I need to leave and do it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like how she's written in this. And then even in the next episode, he's late for a date at a restaurant, and she says a comment like he runs and like, sorry, I'm late, and then she goes, well, you're actually right on time for Peter Parker standards. You're always about a half an hour late. Like it's and then like just kind of continues, like she's kind of accepted this about Peter. It's I know her character in this is really fun.
Yeah. And I'm glad you cleared... Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm glad you cleared up all this stuff about the Hobgoblin, Green Goblin introduction thing, because that was very confusing for me. I was like, wait, what's happening here?
Right. Now, I have a little trivia, not a trivia question, but I have a little opinion poll for you guys. Who do you like better as far as voice acting goes? The Green Goblin from the 80s cartoon that I like so much, or the Green Goblin from this show? Do you remember the Green?
I don't remember particularly from the 80s, to be honest.
We did review it on the show.
Yeah, I can't. I just can't picture it in my head.
Jolie.
I think it fits. I will say it fits really well in this show, I find. And I like that. I like his voice changing from Norman to Green Goblin. I think it's a great. The fact that they play off each other so well. And then the next episode, we actually see like conversations between the two of them.
Right.
And
very cool.
It's totally believable. It feels like it's two different voice actors almost at times. So I do really like this one, but I can't remember the 80s one, to be honest.
Well, to be honest, the reason I asked you is because I was trying to trick you because it's the same voice actor. Neil Ross did both. Isn't that
interesting?
Cool?
Yeah, that's really cool.
Neil Ross also voiced Springer on Transformers, a bunch of other people. Who else did he do? Dusty on G.I. Joe, Hook,
and
Bone
Shipwreck.
Crusher, and on he was a mainstay of those 80s Marvel Sunbow productions. So I was just kind of making a little joke there. I was joshing you, Josh.
Huh?
Anyway,
that's really cool though. I think that he's a great Goblin. So
right.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, on that note, okay, so that episode was on one of my personal favorites because I love all the goblins: Green Goblin, Hobgoblin. That's it. So I recommend. I recommend this episode.
Goblins.
Yeah, the only two. Josh, you recommend this episode?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, G.I. Jolie, you recommend it?
No, absolutely I do.
Cool. Okay, so now we're gonna jump to the third episode that we're gonna review, and G.I. Jolie didn't see it. But she's still going to talk about it.
Synopsis.
Okay, that's good enough. I believe
feel
Josh.
Like this is the most. Yeah, I'll recap this one real quick. This is also, I think, the most like simple one that's happened so far. Like it's really straightforward. So honestly, even a synopsis, you kind of get what happened in this one.
Sure.
Goblin in the last episode gets sucked through a portal, and he uses the last bit of juice from that like machine to come back. And he decides to fix it up, and he's going to use it to spy on Spider-Man to figure out who he is. And he finds out that he's Peter Parker. So then he kind of starts like toying with him and MJ, and he like forces Harry to invite him over to his birthday party, and then interrogates him at this like big dinner. And it leads to like him almost revealing who his secret identity is there. And then like an explosion happens at the party and everybody evacuates. So Peter dons the Spidey costume. The two of them fight. Goblin disappears and goes through a portal and says he's going to target the ones he loves. So he has to race over to Aunt May's because she's in danger. And really it was actually a trick to get him far away from MJ, and he uses a portal to portal over to MJ once he gets to Aunt May's house, which I thought that was really clever. That was a super fun thing that they did. So we have this final battle on the Manhattan Bridge.
Well, Brooklyn Bridge.
Brooklyn Bridge? Brooklyn Bridge.
George Washington Bridge?
Sure.
Are you sure? Isn't it? I thought there was only the... Oh, anyway.
I think there are two. I'm not sure.
There's more than one.
It
I know
is a
that,
double-decked suspension bridge.
There we go.
Spanning the Hudson River, which is the one that he's always crossing. So
Can you tell we're from Canada? Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. There is a Manhattan Bridge. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Brooklyn Bridge, Manhattan Bridge, George Washington Bridge, Ed Koch, Queensboro Bridge.
Okay, so it's
Anyway,
one of them. It's one of those bridges.
Yeah.
And it's very reminiscent of the night Gwen Stacy died, because MJ disappears in the water after Goblin throws her in. And it all kind of comes to a head when the machine breaks and there's this portal that is sucking Norman Osborn into the portal, and Spidey tries to save him, but just like in the comics with the death of Norman Osborn and Green Goblin, he is sabotaged by his own glider and is knocked into the portal, never to be seen or heard from again. And we have like a final confrontation with Madam Web after everything that happens, because Madam Web this whole time has been talking about this like big thing that's coming, to be wary of the man with two heads, which it was Green Goblin and Norman being like the same person. She kind of leaves off with this message that like, you're the chosen one. There's this big event that's going to be happening and you can't escape your destiny. So I'll never talk to you again. But when the time comes, I'm coming to grab you to help out for this thing, because you're the only person that's going to save the universe. And then the episode ends. And yeah, we've been kind of getting this like Madam Web thing throughout, even like the start from season 1. We've had her kind of like hinting at these like larger things that are happening. And it's like building to this like big Secret Wars event that's
right.
That's coming, and I think they're doing a pretty good job of like tying in that through line, and like
sure, yeah,
this is all kind of leading up to it. Yeah, it's super fun.
Here's the thing: I've said before, I really do like Madam Web. I don't necessarily like how mystical they're making her in this show. Like, I'm not a fan of the whole idea of destiny and all that stuff. It does work in fantasy genres like, you know, Harry Potter and stuff like that, but I don't think it works in Spider-Man. But whatever, I can accept that. But other than that, I thought this episode was pretty good. I like the fact that it leads you down the path to make you think that it's going to be like a repeat of the Gwen Stacy thing on the Manhattan Bridge, or whatever one of the 10 bridges this is.
Right.
But I also like the way it ends, because it ends on a cliffhanger, right? Like, is Mary Jane dead? Is she disappeared into the spot dimension? Right? We don't know.
I think we do get a reveal that MJ is like falling through endless portals.
Yes,
at the
yes,
end.
not dead, but you're right. Yeah, she's lost forever. So I thought that was pretty cool. Overall, like, to be honest, when I read the Turning Point thing, for some reason I had it in my head that maybe they were going to do the marriage, because I haven't seen this series in 30 years. So I thought maybe they're going to do the marriage or hint at the marriage, but I didn't realize they were going to kind of do the Gwen Stacy thing, but just do it with Mary Jane. So, I mean, again, this was like they're on a winning streak. This was another good episode. I thought it was really good. G.I. Jolie?
Yeah. Sounds really awesome. I love Madam Web.
That's right. I forgot you didn't see it.
The only time you remember
really
is
cool.
to come and get opinion.
Right. Oops. Cut that part out. Okay, go ahead, Josh.
I like that she's like a sorcerer. She feels very like mystical, more like
one of the
Doctor
weird
Strange
sisters
than
in
anything.
Macbeth or something, or Greek, whatever it's called.
Well,
yeah, I think it's super
Oracle
fun.
of Delphi.
The whole arc is called Sins of the Father, which is like a quote from Shakespeare.
Right.
So it's,
can I also point out? Oh, go ahead.
I said it seems very mystical and appropriate. Also, she's in a chair. Anyone who's in a chair, I'm used to being like an oracle.
Right.
What?
You know, I gotta admit, I criticize writers left and right, and I've criticized Denny O'Neil, but gosh darn it, if Madam Web is not a great freaking supervillain, what a great design, what a great idea, right? And apparently she's gonna be. Is she gonna be in Spider-Verse? Or no, she's gonna be in the next movie.
There's a Madam Web solo movie that's
it with Dakota Johnson, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So
anyway,
that'll be pretty interesting.
Web chair.
Yeah, I think that it's more interesting to have her like this than her introduction in the comics, where she was like just like a fortune teller, I think, but she was like hooked up to this machine. I kind of like that she's like this other dimensional being that knows this like dimensional war is going to be happening. So she's kind of like finding the hero that's going to save it and like helping him kind of like become the hero that will that'll be there to save the day at the end. So it's kind of fun. I really like the switch with Gwen and MJ too. I think it's for a show like this that's very limited, right? Like the comics have happened over decades, so they're able to kind of like do these different things with characters. Like Gwen Stacy, they were dating for years and together in the comics, and then they were like, you know, probably close to getting engaged or something, and then they kill her off, so they can kind of like deal with that story in like the decades they have time to talk about just Gwen. And then later on, decades later, they can introduce MJ and like really build their relationship. But for a TV show, you have very limited time for a cartoon like this. So to like choose, okay, we're going to focus on MJ and make that the love interest. Let's pick out the best stories and the most iconic ones and kind of change them and swap them up a little bit and adapt them so it makes sense for this version of Spider-Man. So having MJ be the one that's lost on the bridge and like giving her the Gwen story, I think is super smart. It ties it both like references that, and it's kind of like a retelling of that story, while also like tying it into what's going on in the like other dimensions and Spider-Man like slowly learning about these other worlds and like being able to like transport himself to other places. So I think it's super fun because we haven't really seen him go to another world yet. We're just seeing these like dimension things pop into another place on his same Earth. So it's really like slowly introducing to this like Spider-Verse thing. I think they're doing a great job with it.
I also want to point out that we have already commented about how much better the animation is in the last few episodes. I think this one could be the best one. Yeah. Like even just looking at the stills on the .fandom.com page, the expressions on the faces in this episode are excellent. Like it just reminds me of how much I love cartoons. I love cartoons. I love watching cartoons at night when it's dark out and the light from the TV is the only source of, illumination. And when the animation's good like this, it's perfect. It's perfect for superheroes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love live action movies, but let's be clear. Cartoons are a better medium, I think, for superheroes, I think. Mm-hmm. And I think this one, not every episode's great, but it's episodes like this, I think, are doing a really good job of adapting these characters.
Yeah, the editing and the animation in just like the first scene of this episode too is just so good. The stuff with Madam Web and how like distorted things are in her like little pocket dimension that she's in, and like the weird like angles and like fisheye like lens angles that they have going on in this, and like the perspective being weird in this weird zone is so fun. I don't think that they've ever done anything with like the camera focusing before either, but in this episode they have like a close-up of Madam Web, and then she like brings in her phone or whatever, like her like computer that she like shows to Peter, and the focus changes. Like her hand is blurry and then it becomes clear at the same time as her face becomes blurry.
Interesting.
Like,
I'm
they
going to
just
look for
do-
that right now. Is that near the beginning or near the end?
right near the beginning. She kind of like, it's like after Spider-Man's like, no, I'm not doing this anymore.
Okay.
She's got
I'll
like
look
the
for it as
cards.
we're chatting.
Yeah. And then like she brings in the cards with like the dragon on it into frame, and everything in the background turns blurry as we're focusing on the cards. Like, I don't remember anything like that being done in the show. It's just very cinematic in this one for sure.
Right.
It's at like a minute 30, like 35.
Okay.
If you're looking it up right now.
I'm looking it up. Yes, I'm looking it up right now, and I see it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
You know what? I want to point out, I don't know as much about animation as you because you're a professional animator, but things like that don't really cost more money, right? They're just more creative, right?
Yeah, I feel, especially for 2D, I feel like it would be very simple.
Right.
This is, I'm assuming, cell animated, so... I assume it's just a matter of it being two different layers and you blur the one while doing the other. It is different for 3D animation, because like in 3D animation, there's like an actual digital camera and you would change the focal length.
Right.
Or they might even do it like post-production doing that, the focal length change, but something like that just adds so much, I find, to a shot, or like to the storytelling part of it. It's really great, and I don't remember that at all in this, or really in any like cartoon like this.
Right. Well, the other thing too is that, you know, again, I love cartoons, but I think one of the criticisms I have of modern cartoons is that it's like I just said, a shot like that does not cost extra money. Suspense does not cost extra money. Mystery does not cost extra money. The only thing that really costs extra money would be like the fluidity of the animation, or say the number of characters in a shot, right? But if you're like, you could direct an entire episode just based on like, say, the Hitchcock rules of suspense, or you could do like a Charlie Chaplin type comedy thing, which is what Bugs Bunny used to do. Like they use kind of the same rules of comedy. So even though I do love cartoons, I feel like a lot of modern cartoons, they kind of forget a lot of the lessons.
Right.
Or of like tradition and history, where it's like, no, you know, you can, like, even if you're doing a kid's show, you can do suspense. You can do, you know, you can control the frame. You can control how long you hold on a shot. And I think the example you just gave is a perfect example where they got creative just in the timing of the shot and where to put the focus. And I think that's great. Yeah,
there's another moment too that really stuck out to me in the show. It's at 16 minutes 40-ish seconds. Spidey's in the Hudson looking for MJ, and he looks up to the sky and starts talking to Green Goblin, and Green Goblin is like talking back to Spidey, and instead of it being like a close-up still of his face, him just like looking down at Spider-Man and saying his line, he's still like circling around on his glider, and as he is circling, his head is like turning to keep focus on Spider-Man the entire time. And then when his head can't turn anymore, he turns his head in the completely opposite direction to like keep making eye contact with Peter in the water. It's just so, like, normally a shot like that would have just been like close up, or like the background would be moving and he's just like moving forward or something. But something like that, I find just adds so much to like the acting and making this like fun and believable.
Because let's be clear, I mean, they want to cut corners wherever they can to save money, but that's an example where you're right. They could have just had, you know those like Hanna-Barbera 60s, 70s cartoons where it's just a big close-up of the guy's face, but they have to remember to blink every 30 seconds so it looks like an actual human. Yeah. They could have done one of those shots, but here they went overboard, you're right, and they had him flying around on his Goblin glider, so it was great.
It's great.
So overall, again, they're on a winning streak. This was a great episode. And yeah, I want to thank you for calling attention to things like I definitely didn't notice. So it makes me appreciate the animation even more. Like, I don't know, this show's great. And here we are, 35-ish years later, and we're still raving about the animation. So that's a good. Is it 35?
Like 20 over 25 years
I'm
now.
not good at math, but yeah, I'll take your word for it. But so there you go. So G.I. Jolie, be sure to watch that episode. Like I said, listeners, we are going to be reviewing every single episode of this cartoon going forward. So be sure to tune in. We'll be covering the whole show now. So there you go. I want to thank Josh and G.I. Jolie for joining me this week. This has been a fun discussion.
Yeah, super fun.
Yep, and be sure to check out our special episode with Abby, which you can see on Facebook and YouTube. It's a special episode where she helps us review the first episode.
Yeah.
And yeah, Josh, you can take it from here.
Yeah, we want to thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. It really helps when you leave us reviews or, keep in contact with us. Let us know what you guys think about the episode and the shows or the comics that we're talking about. You can find us anywhere you can find podcasts. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter at The Comic Book Syndicate. Yeah, let's stay in touch. Think about any better names for the spot. Honestly, I kind of like the spot. I mean, come on, it's classic. But
Dr. Dimension, okay.
Dr. Dimension, maybe, yeah. But yeah, let's keep that comics conversation going.
All right, so until next Monday, see you later.